I just need to take a couple of minutes just to say really sorry guys for the wind noise in the first half of this video, but there's very little I can do about that. This type of buildings we're in, it's so noisy. We've had so much wind today, it's unbelievable. So yeah, try and enjoy today's video guys. I'm sorry about the wind noise. Cheers, bye.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another Sunday video. I would say welcome back to the workshop, but I'm not exactly in the workshop, I'm in the grain store next door. And as you can probably hear, Storm Amy, the tail end of the winds from that are raging. So it is Saturday morning, I'm just prepping to go off to Chester with the frame, the centre and the pass frame on Thursday, so I'm just finalising the last details of that. I want to have a guide through that, and then we'll go into the workshop and maybe look at one or two things I want to look at in there. As a brief update, both video-wise and what's going on. Sorry there hasn't been so many videos this week. It's just been a nuts week. I've been absolutely drained from centre in the past last week, and we actually had an on-the-spot rural payments agency inspection of all our sheet records and that sort of thing and tags, so they had to scan. We had to get sheep in so they could tag them, to check the tags on them and various other things, which was fine, but it's half a day that obviously I've lost completely this week. So that's where my video time has gone. I didn't get a chance to make a video for Thursday at all because I was busy trying to get stuff for that done. That it's half a day of inspection plus, perhaps 3 or 4 hours of making sure everything was in the right place, it was up to date, etc. We're pretty good, we do keep pretty accurate records and we do keep them up to date anyway. So actually a spot inspection like that wasn't such a problem, as I know it would be for some guys. Thankfully we were okay, but anyway. We passed. There's 1 or 2 moves that were a problem, but they were a problem because of government agencies not recording. For example, we put 3 on our form. The government agency recorded it as 2 sheep move. So we have had to produce all the paperwork from the sale to prove that we took 3 sheep to that sale, because the government agency, although it says 3 on the form, have only put 2. So, but we as farmers, we get the non-compliance notice for the government making a mistake. Work that out, because I really can't now. I'm tired of the whole bloody thing now. Anyway, on a more update. Well, no, let's do all the bad news first. So the van is a bloody nightmare. I think that's going. They've worked out now, after 3 clutch failures, they've worked out the clutch master cylinder needs changing. Ford actually have an update out apparently for the master cylinder on my van, and the new part number that Ford fit in are currently unobtainable for an indefinite period of time. They can't give a date as to when it's going to be available, so I'm kind of a bit stuck on that one. I don't think there's any point fitting another new master cylinder to it, given that the previous 2 are faulty. So the original factory fitted one did 80,000 miles, but the previous one has done 2 clutches. The previous new one that was fitted at the same time has only done 2 clutches. So what do you do? So unfortunately that's about to go legal. There will be, I'm in talks now about that, because that can't go on any longer. So yeah, we're just prepping, just make sure the old Land Rover's up to spec to take the frame up to Chester next week. So we'll have a quick chat about that. So the frame is going up to Chester on the 9th of October, which is next Thursday. On Friday, the Archaeological Association are having the Chester Cathedral themselves, I think, pretty much, or they're having a lot of time with us, certainly. And then the actual centre in the past exhibition will go live to the public on Saturday morning. So that's the 11th, and it will be live on the 11th and the 12th. I myself will be there the whole duration of the weekend. Most of it I might pop away Sunday afternoon for a few hours, but I'll be there most of the weekend, as will my fellow lecturer Pete Eels, and there'll always be a couple of guys milling about from the course that you can come and speak to and talk to about what we've done and what we're going to do going forward. And also Glenn from the uni will be there with his colleague Alex to discuss all the research. So if anybody's got any questions about that, a lot of you will have seen the Bench Talk 101 talk that I did, and then last week's one that Glenn did, which unfortunately I haven't actually got to watch myself yet. I'll watch that when it goes onto YouTube when I get 5 minutes, because Thursday was just not happening. We were so late finishing Thursday night because of the inspection, it was unreal. So yeah, there'll be one more video on the Century in the Past content coming up next week. Probably won't be next week, or probably the week after now. But that will be the end of the Century in the Past content for now. I've got a few interesting projects in the lineup for next year that I want to have a look at. But yeah, it's all very interesting. So I'm going to spin the camera around now and look at the job I'm just doing for Century in the Past. So what we're looking at is the beam that Kevin carved with the group. So I did the C, and then each letter was done by a different individual member of the team onto the team of craftspeople on site. So we've all had a hand in carving this title, logo, whatever you want to call it, into this beam. We've also put the date in. Hopefully this is going on display at the university's Botanic Gardens, which we'll see. I'm just going to remove some of this sapwood here, and I'm going to put 2 nice beam ends on. I'm going to hopefully put some OG beam ends on, and see how we get on. I'll see what I like. I'm going to lay out a couple of designs in a bit and put 2 nice beam ends on. I'm then going to mount it on a couple of blocks as feet, and that's that. We probably, when we were doing the layout, should have laid it out here. But this was a nice curved section. We thought that we've just got a bit too much sapwood here for my liking, but I can remove a lot of that and it won't be a problem, and it will look a lot more natural. But anyway, yeah, such is life, as it were. I've got to dress the top as well, because these 2 faces were hewn nicely, but this beam was hewn by complete beginners when it was hewn originally, and it isn't a bad face at all, but I actually want to make it slope back away, because at the moment it makes the front look odd. So I'm going to take a hewing axe in a bit, and I'm going to dress this top face, and I'm going to make it slope the opposite way, just so that we've got a top face that, because at the minute, because it looks twisted and it makes it look like the lettering's leaning towards the floor. So if I dress the top face back, and then what I think I'm going to do is, when I make the blocks, I'm going to taper the blocks just slightly so it makes the lettering lift up a bit. But this will be our showpiece for next week. This is going to sit in front of the centering, and possibly even inside the cathedral somewhere. We'll see. We'll see what we think when we get to the actual layout stage, when we get to site next week, and there'll be 5 or 6 of us on site next week to actually put this thing together. But yeah, that's it for now. And yeah, there's a bit of work to do, but it's a beautiful carving. It's been done by a really good carver, Kevin Ebetti from English Homestead. Yeah, nice guy. I'm hoping to work with Kevin a lot more in the future on these courses and things, but we'll see. So I've brought you back around into the workshop now. It's a bit quieter in here. This building's a bit better insulated, and it's also a bit better protected from the wind, because it's between 2 buildings. So you don't quite get so much noise of the wind in here. And actually, I don't really quite know, unless it's absolutely raining really hard, I don't really know what the weather's doing quite so badly in here. The doors rattle a little bit, but other than that, it is pretty quiet now that the walls have been insulated and actually made better actually by the mezzanine being fitted. So we're up under the mezzanine. This is the area, this is my hand tool area, this is where I do a lot of my work. I spend a lot of time at the back of the workshop here. it's where all my saws are, it's where all my planes are, it's where they all live. So I spend a lot of time up and back here. And actually, in stormy weather like this, it's lovely because it's quiet, and I often have the log burner on as well at this end of the workshop, so it does just make for a nice place to be, really. Which I'm going to light in a minute, ready to do one or two jobs. So thank you to everyone who turned up, you know, the guys who are interested in tools, the guy who watched my videos. I'm gutted I didn't get to speak to all of you, especially Rob, who came, and I was really rude because we were on the way to Sykes's and I never got a chance to speak to him. But yeah, it was wonderful to see so many of you followers who follow my videos turn up on site and come and see what was going on. And like I say, I would have loved a bit more time to have actually gone through the whole project with all of you. That support means a lot to me, and like I say, you know, unfortunately there was one or two times when I was really stressed with one or two things, and I didn't get to spend as much time as I would have liked with you guys, so I apologise for that, because I probably made myself look like a mega dick last week with how busy and stressed I was, and not getting a chance to speak to you guys. But I do appreciate the fact that you all turned up and came and saw and you know, throughout the week. I must say a massive thank you to Andy Brown, who turned up with a van full of tools as normal, but you could see he'd put a lot of thought into it, and it was all tools that in some way, shape or form were linked with the project. He got one or two really sort of quirky axes, one of which he thinks is a stage prop, and the other one is one of those exploding splitters. But you know, both of which were well received by the crew, and sort of we had a good look at all that. But he had some beautiful dividers, and he also had a section of the most stunning panelling I think I've ever seen, that he's reclaimed from somewhere, I assume, or brought from somewhere, knowing Andy. But yeah, it was just nice to have 5 minutes and actually have a look at a few tools that, you know, other people I think are worth saving. And you know, he's right, they are worth saving. These tools, we need to keep hold of them where we can, otherwise they're going to be lost over the next few years. And that's important, you know, and without people like Andy actually, and you know, the vision of people like Andy, of you know, one or two others, Ken Hawley and the likes, actually a lot of this stuff would have disappeared completely in the past 50 years. So yeah, it's just nice to see, and you know, it was nice to have a chat with him. The group all had a chat with him about tools, and we looked at what he got, and you know, where he thought that it would come from, and what the purposes were, and it just added a real nice layer to the event, you know. And just before we shot off to Sykes's, so yeah, which was also a very excellent visit and a much needed look, especially for some of the conservation joiners and carpenters that were on the course. You know, I quite often get, where do you source your timber? And in short, I source most of it through Sykes's. And when we walked around the sheds, I think one or two of the guys sort of looked and went, yeah, I can see why you come here. You know, yeah, they're not the cheapest merchants in the UK, but then, you know, you never get a bad board out of them. So, hey ho, such is life. So yeah, and like I say, I was flabbergasted by the amount of people that were turning up during the week, followers and such, just to see how we were getting on, and come and say hello and what have you. And it really was nice to see you all there, you know, and yeah, next time I'll try and be a bit more prepared and a bit less stressed when you all turn up. So, because it was genuinely wonderful to see the amount of people that came. On the whole, the week was a real success. You know, we had one or two teething issues with saws, But given that most of the saws were actually antique, I don't find that surprising. You know, so the one pit saw hasn't been used for at least, I would say, 50 years. Well, I've had the one for 15 in my possession, and the one was freshly sharpened to use on that log, so I haven't used it in the 15 years I've had it. And the farmer who had it before me probably had it for a similar period, if not longer. So, you know, it's at least 30 years that I know it's not been used, if not more like 50 or 60. You know, I should think just post or just pre-Second World War was the last time it was used. So, you know, that's no mean feat to bring a saw that stood around for that length of time, that's had a hard working, you know, they both had hard working lives, both of those saws that came from the farmer in question. I did promise I'd use, you know, when he gave them to me, I promised him I'd use them one day, and I think we've done that now. I think we can safely say we've done that. They both need a bit of tuning still to get them track right, although they track better with sawyers who've done a bit more. You know, there was one or two particular guys, you know, Pete Eels, my other lecturer, Paul Hook's done a fair bit, but Otto, one of the gentlemen, craftsmen people on the course from Wales, he and I made it work really nicely, and he and Paul made it work really nicely as well, Paul Kennedy. So, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for actually needing some experience time working a saw like that. And obviously the more we do as a group, as a collective, the more experienced people will get sawing. You know, I've got the trestles now. We can pretty much tip up anywhere in the UK now, hire a couple of young man boards and some handrails, and we can start sawing. You know, this is the thing, we can get the pit saws out now pretty much anywhere in the UK. It all flat packs into my small 10 foot by 5 foot IFA Williams trailer. So actually, there's nothing to stop us now as a collective. You know, running demonstrations and that sort of thing. The only thing I would say is we would need some budget, because it's not fair to drag people halfway across the country for nothing. But if the shows out there or what have you that have a small budget and want something like that, we're happy enough to come, bring a couple of hewers, bring a couple of pit saws, bring the sawing kit, and you know, you'll have to find us a few logs to work on. But if you can do that, we're more than happy to do that. And if you can find us some, you know, decent size ash or chestnut coppice logs, we'd also be more than happy to start converting planks with splitting wedges as well, and hewing planks, you know, as a true representation of carpentry right up until the Industrial Revolution. You know, our timescale for this particular project has been medieval, but actually you know, those practices, the sort of cleaving boards with wedges and throws and that sort of thing, and hewing, it continues right up until, and actually in rural areas of the UK, it continued right through the Industrial Revolution. You know, there's still references to people pit sawing before the First World War in the UK. So actually, you know, we're offering, yes, the tools are slightly more modern because that's what survived. You know, the sort of medieval tools have not really survived. You know, they've been superseded, and you imagine, you know, those tools have worked for a very long time if they're still hanging around now, you know. But in the main, you know, I've got a couple of very antique frame saws that with a bit of work we could use, but we can pretty much now, as a collective, put on a demonstration pretty much anywhere in the UK of sawing, of hewing, of cleaving, and then hewing dressing boards for doors and for joinery. And there's, you know, there's some really good craftspeople that were on that event last week, and also on the first event, who I know for a fact that I can now call upon at any time to do stuff like this. You know, I'm I'm beginning to build a bit of a database that actually there's enough of us out there now that can work to a high enough standard that actually we are getting towards this being able to, I jokingly said in one of the talks on the first stage of this crazy Centre in the Past project that I'd like to prove that UK craftspeople could reproduce. You know, for example, should Canterbury Cathedral burn down tomorrow, we could do exactly what the French have done with Notre Dame. You know, we have enough British craftspeople that could rebuild historically accurately a building of that status. And I stand by that. And this project has definitely proved that to me. And we've trained quite a few guys, we've had quite a few improvers, and we've had quite a few out and out bloody good hewers, who are also good carpenters, you know, good joiners. We've had some amazing joiners come through this project as well, and you know, it's made me feel very good about the UK, or the future of the UK craft industry. And by craft I mean those of us who can produce a result with both machining and hand tools. You know, we can use historically accurate methods, but we could also, if we needed to, use modern methods. You know, there is enough of us out there that can do both now. There's one or two guys who specialise in modern methods, and that's fine, you know. But actually, it's important to prove that these skill sets are still there and to keep using these skill sets. You know, you all know I've spoken about this before, but of all things like cleft lath are becoming very endangered crafts in the UK. I think there's one worker still making cleft lath in the UK for architectural work. That's not a situation we need to be in. You know, bundles of oak cleft lath are over £90 in a merchant now for 50 bundles, for a bundle of 50 laths, and a lot of it's been having to be imported because the guys just aren't there to do it, and that is a bad situation. You know, we were, you know, small woodlands and coppice work has been massive in the UK for thousands of years, and admittedly it died out when we started coal. You know, coal was one of the killers of coppice work because the high value charcoal that was needed for smelting iron dropped out of favour. You know, coal was king for coal, and anthracite and things like that were king for, you know, for producing steel and industrial processes. However, we've still had a need, until plasterboard became mainstream, we still had a need for lath. And obviously some of that went on to sawn lath because the sawmills were so good. But actually a sawn lath isn't as good as a cleft lath. And I have stood, to prove a point, I stood on a cleft lath ceiling that I was told was shot, and I stood between the joists and I jumped up and down on this cleft lath ceiling without damaging it. And it made one or two people wince, but I knew damn well that that cleft oak lath that was on that ceiling had no worm damage. It was in good condition and was highly unlikely to give way, you know, even with my 125 kilos then jumping up and down on my size 12s. So yeah, we do need to make sure that the future of that craft is also saved, and that's something I'm keen to look at. I'm in talks with one or two people about projects for next year that will include cleft lath. So yeah, watch this space. Hopefully we will have, in the coming months, we'll have some SPAB or King's Foundation students through the workshop as well. I'm very, very keen to now sort of keep the momentum for teaching elements of craft and for handwork up you know, that's something I'm really keen to keep doing now, and keep the momentum up from what's built from this year's, you know, from the 3 courses I've run this year. And yeah, I'd like to keep that side of things going if we can, as well as actually trying to get some paid work done. So yeah, there's a lot to come, a lot of interesting stuff to come. But I've got an interesting question for you guys, and I know I've asked it before. What direction do you want the channel to take? You know, the viewing figures on the Century in the Past project are down compared to what they normally are on my normal videos. So are you not liking that content, guys? You know, it is true craftwork content. Okay, it's not me, and I'm not, because of the locations and what have you, I'm not able to talk through the videos as much as I normally would. But yeah, what's next? What do you guys want to see next? You know, I've got plans to do some more window content. That's a definite. That will happen over the winter. I've got 1 or 2 really nice contracts coming up to do some Victorian, and actually unusually for me, some Edwardian windows. I've got some beautiful Edwardian bays to restore back to their original condition. So these windows have had the mullions chopped out. They've had big single panes of glass put in the centres, and the sills are now rotten. They've also had opening lights taken out and 1950s, 60s louvers put in. And the client wants me to take the louvers out, take the big centre panes of glass out, and put the mullions back. So that'll be a good exercise, but they've also got to have sills all round as well, which is going to be an absolute nightmare because they're quite big windows, and they are also structural windows, so they can't be removed. And this is the problem with casement window repairs, is that unlike sashes where you can slide a sill in and out, because effectively there's no tenon, everything sits in grooves, it makes sash sill replacement really easy. Because casements have tenons, you either need to take a course of brick. If the bulk of the window is in really good condition, I wouldn't be perturbed about taking a few bricks out and lowering the sashes off, the sills off, and then putting new sills on. We have done that in the past where there's stone sills that need replacing. We've actually taken the stone sills, the degraded stone sills out. We've done all our window repairs, and then we've put the new stone sills in, which is quite, you know, that's been quite common for me over the years. So yeah, we'll look at that. We'll look at how you replace a sill on a casement as part of those videos. Obviously, it will need to be weather suitable for filming, so that may not come till the spring, but we'll see. I've then got I've got to build a mobile bench. As I said earlier in the video, the master cylinder for the clutch for my 2020 Ford Transit is made of pure unobtainium, so they're just not available. They're on that part number returns back order constantly, and there doesn't seem to be much of an option in the OEM parts market either. I can probably get a cheap one that would get it to the sale and get it gone, but I'm not sure what the future is. So I'm definitely, for a couple of jobs coming up, going to need a mobile bench, and certainly for demonstration work I'm going to need a mobile bench. I was asked by one of the guys who follow last week, would I actually capture that series on film? And I said to him that yes, I probably would, but is that something that everybody's interested in seeing? You know, do you want me to see me build a mobile bench? You know, I'm not keen on following on for subjects that have been done to death, and certainly bench building's been done to death, but would you guys be interested in seeing me make a collapsible workbench? You know, it won't be to any particular style. It may be more of an English style bench, because I've actually come back to that style of bench with deep aprons, quite perfectly honest, because they suit hand planing really well. I've tried the deep tops with no aprons, the more sort of Ribot style benches, and I'll be honest, I'm not that impressed. You know, I love my heavy top bench, and it's a cracking mortising bench. If I want to hand mortise anything, I'll do it on the heavy top bench over my lighter English benches every day of the week, if I can. But that's not a given. That's not, you know, it doesn't matter necessarily that that bench isn't available or that bench is doing other things, because I can mortise over the leg of an English bench and it's not a problem. But that heavy top does seem to suit mortising. But yeah, I need a bench that I can take out. It's going to be in the region of 6 foot long, so it's fairly easy to pack up, and ideally will go in the back of a decent estate car, because that may be the option to replace the van. It's something like a Volvo V70 or something like that. So yeah, something in the region of 6 foot long that will have a vice, it will have aprons, and it will have some ability to be knocked down, so tusk tenons probably on the stretchers with wedges, and then something like perhaps a lapped over top, or a top that has laths on even, so it drops over the trestles. The trestles are held together by the stretchers, and then some housed on aprons that may bolt on, I think. I do prefer that method. I may look to put something like Paul Sellers' wedge system in, because that does also seem to work well. I don't know yet. We'll discuss that one nearer the time. But yeah, is that something you guys want to see? And if it is, I will do it. If it's not, if you're a bit say no, because then I won't bother recording it, and I will just quickly knock out a bench and happy days. Again, that will be over the winter. That'll probably be around Christmas, I would imagine. Looking at the sort of current workload and schedule that's got to be got through. I've been very lax this summer because of the vehicle situation, and having such an absolute head bender as organising, you know, these big events that Century in the past have been. It's taken me away from the day job massively, for which I've got to apologise to my clients, because it's not fair. But yeah, I've now got the winter to catch up before we start lambing. I want to be caught up, which, like I say, I'm leaning towards going out and buying a cheaper Volvo V70 estate. I think it's going to be. I need a manual, because the autos, they will be getting long in the teeth. They'll be high mileage, and I'm not keen on auto boxes anyway. Probably a diesel. But yeah, I think that's the way I'm going to go, certainly for now, whilst this Transit, I'm stuck in limbo with the Transit at the minute. I can't sell it in the condition it's in, because I can't afford to sell it in the condition it's in. But I've also spent £13,000 repairing that Transit since I bought it in March 24, first week in March 2024. So I genuinely am now stuck. You know, my old Defender is back in working order. We put a cylinder head on that the other day, because despite having the head done by IB Engineering in Nuneaton, who did an excellent job of the head, we think there's actually a hairline crack in it that's not opening up until the head starts to get up to operating temperature, and then was starting to lose water. So if I was running locally all the time, I'd have left it for a bit longer, but unfortunately it wasn't predictable, and the moment you got it on a dual carriageway, it would just begin to heat. So time had come for that. It just, you know, we put a brand new cylinder head on from Turner Engineering I did that on the Thursday before Century in the Past began, and all credit to both IB Engineering and Turner Engineering. Those guys turned me those jobs around pretty quick. IB turned the head around within 4 days, and he's absolutely manic. In fairness to him, and he did do a really good job of skinning the head. And you know, it's just, it needed a hot crack test. You know, it needed to be crack tested while the head was warm, which unfortunately he doesn't have the facility to do. So you know, whatever. But he did do a real smart job of getting it skimmed and what have you. And to Turner Engineering, I mean, they are incredible. We ordered it at 10 to 4. 10 to 4? 10 to 3. Yeah, no, 10 to 4. Wednesday, before Centering the Past kicked off on the Tuesday. And in fairness to them, it was with me for 2:30 the following day. And that head was fitted by 10:30 on Thursday night. So I can't fault that kind of service. That's an incredible service. You know, all respect, all credit to Turner Engineering. So at least the Defender's now sorted. She's back in the land of the living, and you know, I just don't want to hammer it. You know, I don't want to put the massive miles on her that you know, that I'm doing. You know, it's still under 200,000 miles, that vehicle, and I would like to keep it that way, really, as long as I can, you know. So yeah, I think a cheap estate until the van situation is sorted, and I can get the Transit sold and look at what we're buying. You know, I don't need a van quite so much over the winter, so I think it's time for that. You know, put that to bed for now. Unfortunately, I've got to keep insuring it and taxing it, because it's stored in a public place at the moment with the garage. So yeah, I need to buy something cheap and cheerful as I run about, just to keep the miles off the Defender, really. But yeah, so like I say, guys, do please let me know what you want to see. You know, the Sunday videos will be back from this week, although I am in Chester next Sunday, so I need to make one in the week for next Sunday before we go. So that may only be a shorter video next Sunday. But the Sunday videos will definitely be back. I'm going to try. This week we'll probably only get a Tuesday video out again, because like I say, we're building up at Chester on Thursday. I may take a few snippets and put it out Thursday evening when I get back from Chester, because I've got to take a Land Rover and trailer. Although the university are going to put me up for the week, I am also very wary of leaving my Land Rover and trailer in Chester town centre all week. So I think I'm going to bring them both back on Thursday and borrow a car from my in-laws and go up there, back up there on Thursday morning. Friday morning, ready to meet the Archaeology Association and talk them through the build and what we did. So yeah, that's been the week, 10 days that we've had, the whirlwind that we've had since I last managed to make a Sunday video. In between all this, we're also trying to train a 8-month-old Border Collie puppy who is incredibly keen, incredibly sharp, and being a bitch, she's incredibly strong-willed as well. So she knows best at the moment, and it's tedious. I'm going to try for one of the videos next week. I need to make a couple of some bent shepherd's crooks, so I'm going to look at that hopefully this afternoon or Monday if I get a chance. So that'll be one of this week's videos, is making a couple of Hazel just working crooks. You know, they won't be nice horn topped crooks, they will be proper old school bent working crooks. So yeah, we'll take a look at that as well next week. So yeah, thank you all for watching, guys. See you on the next video. Bye.